I can't believe it's been 4 years since I did 7 tips for older beginners. That video has over 3 million views, and I've gone from 8,000 subscribers to over 100,000 subscribers. It's quite astonishing, and that one video is kind of the lightning in the bottle that made it all happen. I figured it's probably about time for me to do a follow-up video and give you 7 more tips. And I'm going to just say it's for older and all beginners. I got a little bit of grief about saying older beginners, but I was actually asked to create that specific video for someone that was older and was like, you know, how do I start and what do I do? And my main goal there was time management. And so what I want to do is I want to give you 7 more tips that you can piggyback on top of the 7 that we started with before. And I'll put a link up there so that you can go to that video if you've not seen it. You might start there and then come back to this video. The first one I'm going to talk about is, that I didn't mention in the first video, is get a metronome. A metronome is a device, and you can get one for your phone. If you have an iPhone or a smartphone, you can. This one's called Tempo. I think I had to pay something for it, maybe $5. But there are free ones. There are ones that come with tuners, and they're free for your smartphone. Playing with a metronome will really help you to do several things. It'll help you to kind of tighten up your timing and get it more locked, because nobody wants to sing or play along with someone who has bad time. In other words, they're speeding up or slowing down. They're inconsistent. The other thing you can use a metronome for is you can use it to chart your progress. You can start working on a groove and or a scale, and maybe that's a certain tempo, maybe that's 100 beats per minute, and then you get that down and you bump it up to 105 beats per minute, and you get that down and then you bump it up to 110, and so on and so forth, until you get to that point where you can play it as fast as you want to play. I've used metronomes for years to do that very thing, to chart my progress. And I'll even write the tempo maybe on the music that I'm working on. Maybe it was some kind of classical piece or something that I wanted to get to performance tempo. So that's one thing. But here's a little caveat. A metronome is great. Playing in time or playing to something in time is great. What I prefer to do a lot of times, if I'm working on something, a groove or something like that, particularly if I'm playing rhythm, working on my rhythm patterns, like a strum pattern or something like that, I prefer to play to a drum machine. So if you have an an Apple computer, you have GarageBand, which comes with Drummer. So that's 80 beats per minute. Kind of a basic rock beat. I can go to this one, which is basically an R&B beat. It's got a little shuffle to it. But that drummer's not going to go anywhere. They're going to stay at whatever tempo you set it at. I can speed up the tempo. So let's say I've got 80 down and I want to go up to 100. It's a much more fun way to practice with a metronome. It's also a much more realistic way to practice with a metronome. Because when the ultimate goal is to get out there and play in front of people and play with a band, and we're going to talk more about that in a second. But your ultimate goal is to kind of be playing with a real drummer. That's really where it starts to get fun. And so you might as well practice with a drummer. Okay, so that's tip number 1. Okay, tip number 2. And I said I was going to get to it, and I am right now. Okay, tip number 2 is jam with others. Get in a band. Start a band. Okay, and I know you're saying, oh, I can barely play. Okay, so maybe don't start a band, but maybe find another guitar player that you can jam with. It's really in those times when you're playing with others that you grow faster. Like you can chart your daily or weekly progress and go, okay, I'm going like this. You have a band rehearsal, and it just jumps. Partially because, several reasons, but one because you're afraid to make a fool of yourself. So before you get to band rehearsal, you're probably going to practice a little bit more than you did, at least particularly the songs that you're working on that week or whatever. Another reason that might help you get better is because you've got competition. If you're competitive, playing with another guitar player is really fun. And you can kind of play off of each other. You can learn together. Even if you're both beginners, you can kind of bounce off each other that way. And a third reason to play with others or to join a band or something is you'll learn from them and they'll learn from you. Believe it or not, you've got something to offer to someone else and they have something to offer you, and there may be something that you're fingering wrong or you're doing it incorrectly. They may point that out. And there may be something that you've noticed that is a time saver or is a fun chord or fun lick. I remember reading stories about the Beatles when Paul and John and George, if they heard about someone in Liverpool that knew a chord they didn't know, they'd get on a bus and go across town just to learn one new chord. So you may get together with a friend and you may just learn one new chord. You might learn B7 or something that you didn't know before, and it's totally worth it. It's a great way to get better. Other places you can play with others, you could start, maybe have a singer and just accompany a singer. You could become an accompanist. Or you could play at church. And if they have lots of guitar players, maybe consider taking up bass, because bass players are harder to find in bands. And so sometimes a lot of bass players like Paul McCartney, Gene Simmons, they started out as guitar players, and they started to play a lot more because they found a role in a band, in a working band. So there you go, tip number 2. All right, tip number 3 is get your guitar set up. This was a common comment that I didn't talk about in the first video, and a lot of people said that. And so what does that mean, get your guitar set up? Well, if you have a cheap guitar, chances are maybe the neck is a little warped, and most necks have a truss rod down the middle that can be adjusted, but should be adjusted by a pro. And they can adjust it, maybe put new strings on it, maybe lower the action down here at the saddle. They might have to make some other adjustments if you have an electric guitar, an acoustic guitar, whatever. But you can tell them to make it easy to play. Maybe go with lighter strings. I talked about that in the first video. But if you have a guitar set up, it'll play better, it'll sound better, it'll be more in tune, it'll be easier to play, and you're probably going to be more likely to pick it up. It won't be... my second guitar was a K 12 string, and K guitars were not very good guitars, and 12 strings are like the hardest guitar to play. So it was kind of a double whammy, and that guitar that I got when I was 11 years old almost made me quit playing guitar. I was really discouraged by that instrument. I kind of wanted to be the next John Denver, but it led me to this 4th tip. Okay, so tip number 4. If you're struggling with pushing down chords, okay, if you're struggling with getting good sounds of the chords, one thing you could do is get a capo, okay? And if I capo at the 1st fret even, now the strings, instead of being at the height of the nut right here, they're at the height of the fret, which is a little bit lower, and that might be just enough movement for you to be able to play chords that you were not able to play before. But now you're up a half step. So what you can do is you can take your guitar and you can tune it down. Now, guitar standard tuning is E, A, D, G, B, E. So if we tune it down a half step, that would be E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B flat, E flat. And so I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to tune down. So now I'm tuned down a half step. So instead of being E, A, D, G, B, E, I'm E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B flat, and E flat. On my tuner, and I've got the Snark tuner, I would really suggest getting a tuner of some kind, because that's another tip. People won't want to play with you if you're never in tune. It's pretty obvious. Okay, on my tuner it actually says D sharp, G sharp, C sharp, F sharp, A sharp, and D sharp. And those are the same. D sharp and E flat are the same note. It's called being an enharmonic. You don't need to worry about it. There won't be a quiz on that, so don't worry. But now I can capo at the 1st fret. Now I'm going to need to retune because the strings will get bent a little bit. But now with the capo at the 1st fret, I am now playing E, A, D, G, B, E because I tuned down a half step. So the tuning went that way, but I brought the capo this way so that it averaged out. So that is G, C, G, D. Whereas before, with the capo off and tuned down a half step, this would be G flat, C flat, G flat, and D flat. All right? Now, you can also say the frets are too big for you. Your hands are smaller, and maybe you're really struggling to play in open position or in first position, which is technically what we're doing when we're at the first fret here with the capo. That's technically first position. What you could do is you could go all the way up to, say the 5th fret if you wanted to, and the frets start getting smaller, I'm sure you've noticed, as you go up the fretboard. So now I have, the frets are smaller. For me, it's less room. It's actually more difficult the further up I go because my hands are fairly large. But for some of you, it might be a lot easier. And then what you do is get the chords down, get your drum machine going, practice your chords, and then the next week go down a fret. And then the next week go down another fret, practice your chords some more, and then go down until you're all the way down into open position. That way, you can kind of slowly train your fingers to be able to spread out a little bit more like they need to. And there's definitely chords that require more stretches than just simple open chords. And as your fingers start to stretch out, and I've showed people this before, it's really amazing. But the reach with my left hand, the distance between my index finger and my pinky on my left hand is far greater than my right hand because my right hand is never asked to stretch like that. But you can see, I don't know if you can see that, but I've got quite a difference between where my pinkies are. I'm really trying hard to spread my fingers as far out as I can. And so that's from trying to do chords like this. And my hand has stretched. My left hand is even a little bit longer than my right. And I think there's some physiological thing. I'm pretty sure put it down low like this. I'm pretty sure you can maybe see that. I don't know. But I think if your right hand's normally bigger than your left or vice versa. So that may be naturally occurring. But I think it's a byproduct of playing guitar and using this hand in a certain manner. So tip number 5, I want you to try to listen to more music. Try to be, if you listen to maybe talk radio or if you listen to a lot of podcasts, maybe turn on the radio and listen to a little bit more music. Maybe get some playlists together that have a lot of guitar-based music in the style that you want to learn how to play. If you want to play rock tunes and Zeppelin, listen to more Zeppelin. You probably already do. If you want to do bluegrass, then start to put together some bluegrass playlist. I want you to start to listen to the music in different ways, trying to pick out the instruments. See if you can figure, okay, is that a guitar? Is that electric guitar? Is that acoustic guitar? Is that 12-string? Is it a bass? One of the things you can do is start listening to the drums. That's actually really, really important. So, for example, in this groove, there's basically 3 different instruments that the drummer's playing right there. He's playing a kick drum, a snare drum, and a hi-hat. And the kick is played with his foot. Boom, 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 boom. Okay? The snare is on 2 and 4 for the most part. 1, 2, 3, 4. So listen to the snare. Try to hear the snare in the music that you're listening to. Try to hear the kick drum. Notice that the kick and the bass are usually playing together. The drummer's right foot is usually locked to the right hand of the bass player. Listen to the hi-hat. That's, in my opinion, the most important thing to listen to in a drummer, because I'm usually trying to lock to what the drummer's doing with his right hand. If he's a right-handed drummer, he's playing hi-hat with his right hand. And that's what your right hand of your strumming hand is going to do. So that's what I really suggest. So as you listen to music, try to listen to the different instruments. Even if it's an orchestra, you can practice listening for the oboes and the bassoons and the violins and the violas and the cellos and the percussion. Being able to, in your head, to be able to start separate those instruments really allows you to start to imagine and visualize your role in a band situation. in a group setting, in a group music situation, okay? All right, number 6. Now this one might be a little bit controversial, but what I want you to do is to get a better instrument if you can possibly afford it. One of the things that happens when you buy a better instrument is it kind of guilts you into playing it more. You know, if you spend $2,000 on a guitar, you might be more likely to pick it up and get good at it because you don't want to waste your money. One thing you can do though before you buy it is try to become as much of an expert on it as you can. Go to forums, read blogs, read reviews, maybe subscribe to some magazines, really get into guitar and really get into that purchase. Play a lot of guitars, talk to people. Maybe even one of the things I suggest if you're going to buy an instrument and you're not a very good guitar player is maybe take a friend out to lunch that is a good guitar player and then take them to a guitar store and say, hey, will you play some of these guitars so I can hear how they sound? Because it's difficult sometimes, especially with acoustic instruments, to hear how they're going to sound when you're sitting here. It's easier to hear if you're sitting in front of them. So if you have a friend that's a good guitar player, you can really do what we call A-Bing the instruments. Play instrument A, compare it with instrument B, go back and forth until you make a decision. So I would, but again, I know it's difficult for many of you. You can't afford a really high quality instrument, and that's totally fine. So many famous guitar players started out on very cheap instruments. So it's not mandatory, but it is, if you know yourself and you are prone to being maybe guilted into practicing more because you spent some real coin on a guitar, might be a way to go. Anyway, don't send me any bills. Okay, all right. Now we have one more, last one, number 7. I got to put my pick down so I can. Number 7. All right, number 7 is don't be discouraged. Don't give up. There's basically I talk to a lot of people in the music, people that want to be in the music business, young people, and the only guarantee I can ever give them is if they quit, they fail. That's the only guarantee you get in life. And so if you don't quit, you still may not succeed, but you may fail, but you have a chance of succeeding. It's kind of like golf. In golf, and I'm not a great golfer, I barely play golf at all, but I know you've got to get the ball to the hole when you're putting. If the ball comes up short in a putt, it never had a chance. It was never going to get there. So I don't want you to be discouraged. I want you just to go ahead and continue to fight on. Don't quit because somebody's better than you. I walked into guitar centers and heard someone playing amazing. I come around the corner and it's an 11-year-old kid and you're like, all right, I quit. Or when I see someone like Eric Johnson or Guthrie Govan, or there's a million guitar players I can watch. I have friends that make me want to quit playing guitar. A friend of mine joked that when he went to see Chick Corea's Electric Band, and I think Frank Gambale was playing guitar, they had booths set up where you could seek counseling and sell all your gear. So don't seek counseling and sell all your gear just because someone's better than you. You can take that as a challenge. Or just enjoy their music. You can't give up. I'm a living, breathing testimony to not giving up. I moved to Los Angeles when I was 21, and I really didn't have anything happening for me musically in this city. I moved here to be a musician, to be a studio musician, to write music and things like that. It didn't really start happening for me until I was in my late 40s. Most people aren't willing to wait 25 plus years for their career to get started. But there is a reward for the tenacious, and I feel like I've reached that point, and you have helped me reach that point on YouTube by getting me 100,000 subscribers. And I'm saying that now because I'm hoping that 2 years from now you're going to be saying, "Wow, I can't believe you had 100,000 subscribers. You've got 1 million subscribers now." I don't know. Let's do it. Let's try to do that. Anyway, speaking of subscribing, if you haven't subscribed, please do help me get to that 1 million, and then. Like this video, check out a bunch of videos. I have a lot of videos. I'm still live stream, so you might want to turn on the notification bell, and I will upload a new video maybe once a week or every other week. I will go online every now and then. Right now I'm doing it once a week, but I don't want to commit to video here when that is because it may change. But if you just have notifications on, you'll get a notification that I've gone live, so you can check it out. And I'm usually gearing most of my live stream stuff to beginners. the idea is to really kind of do lessons for beginners live. And we have quite the community there, and I think you'll really enjoy it. And we interact a lot, so it's a lot of fun. For me, it's a great way to have interaction with people, because this job is kind of a lonely job, playing guitar all day in my studio. But anyway, God bless you all. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.